Welcome to metal.de. I'm your host, Leon, and today we are talking about the new Lost Society album, Hell is a State of Mind, which will be out on March 6th. Therefore, let's welcome Samy. Glad to have you here. Hope you're doing good.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm doing very good, thank you.
Hell is a state of mind feels more psychological than physical. When did that concept first become clear to you?
I think it was a very cool point during, the songwriting sessions took about, I'd say the better side of 2 years. And at a very early stage when we started writing these songs, I feel like we developed the idea that there's going to be a musical storyline. And on top of that, I had the concept of a lyrical storyline. So I feel like I definitely agree with you that it feels more like a completion. It feels like a big sort of theatrical album more than ever before. And what I love about it is still that, I'm a big fan of concept records, being from Seventh Son of Iron Maiden to The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. And I love the fact that when you're able to create a concept record that gives you one experience when you listen to it from start to back, but a different experience if you just pick apart the songs, I think we tapped into that sort of mindset. And for us, yeah, it happened at a very early stage that we knew that, it's going to be larger than just, compiling song after the other. It's going to be more like an experience. And I'm very happy with the way it turned out, especially because, we were able to harness that energy and that sort of dramaticness from the orchestral side of the record. And I feel like, the vocal lines and the storyline itself definitely lends itself to a very, very sort of theatrical, dramatic, yet tragic sort of mindset too.
I totally agree with that. Was the title there from the beginning, or did it emerge during the writing process?
I remember that we probably about half of the record was written because, even that's difficult to say because once again, we wrote about, 40, 50 songs and it was the best ones it is usually sort of like obvious which ones are the best ones, but still, we were about halfway through. And I was at home sick as a dog. I had a fever of almost 40 degrees. And, I just had my laptop and I was writing lyrics and I had a microphone out and I was mumbling lyrics and Hell is a State of Mind was one of the things in between a lot of gibberish that, I noticed the next day and I sent all of it over to our producer and he was like, there's something here. There's something very beautiful, something very sort of, beautiful yet tragic in that word or in that phrase. And it sort of went on from there. We wrote the song, I think the next day or the next time I was at the sessions when I was feeling better. And there was something very sort of cathartic about that title and that phrase that sort of helped me. It helped me, resolve the story in my head and put all the necessary pieces into where they should be to create the storyline.
Okay, so is this album about escaping hell or accepting that it exists within us?
It's a combination of both, but it's like at face value, it's someone running away from their afterlife and being reborn. But when you go deeper into it, it is about that whole concept of how a human being can, in so many senses, be born so many times within one lifetime because, hell can be going to work. Hell can be losing a loved one. It can be, it can be a daily struggle or a very long struggle, but it's the understanding that, there is one way or another, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, whether it is self-acceptance or acceptance that you can't help yourself or you can't help that situation you're in, because there is something very peaceful about that feeling when you understand that you are fully, not in control of the situation. Therefore, there's nothing you can do. Therefore, you shouldn't stress about it. So, I feel like it has a lot of layers. But from my viewpoint, it is, it's the story of this character who is making their way out of a very dark place and, observing these different things that have, their societal problems, personal problems, and everything in between. And, obviously the title itself, it gives away the fact that, this large and big realization in the end is positive more than negative. Absolutely.
Do you think most people recognize when they are in that state of mind?
Uh, no, I don't think so because I mean, and I'm basing that opinion just on myself because, I was in a very, very heavy place and it took me a while to understand that I am in that place. There was I feel like the first emotion that people always feel when they're not feeling okay is denial. It's first like, nah, I'm good. I'm all right. I don't need to talk about this. I don't need to deal about this. And I feel like so many problems in our society are can be traced back to that emotion. It's like someone should have gone to therapy or someone should have talked about something, but rather than that, they just let it all build up inside and it blew up on either, a group of people or someone on the internet or their loved ones. And that's what, stuff started spiraling out of control afterwards. By no means am I saying that all of the problems in our society and our world are, traced back to yourself. There are some things that are so much larger than that, but I'm basing this on my experience and my story of this record.
Okay, so when we are at this point of view, how personal is this record compared to your previous releases?
I mean, it's always going to be personal to, to a certain point because I've never known how to write lyrics from someone else's standpoint than my own. Because, I think that's the beauty in writing lyrics and being an artist in a sense. Like you're never going to be better than someone else who is doing something that comes from their own soul. And in that sense, no one else is going to be as good as you if you put yourself into your music or your art. And I like that concept. And I've always sort of been a very open person. I feel like I've always been very natural in writing what I have in my head, very unfiltered, in good and in bad. And I feel like, this record was a necessary story to be told from, the sort of ripple effect that was from the last record to coming here. Obviously there's always going to be semi-fictitious ways of what I'm talking about, something that's personal, like, in a way, like I'm never going to be able to talk about, rebirth or death in its most pure form because I haven't gone through either one in a physical way, but in a mental way, it's a fully different story. And it's always going to be my point of view of that and giving my sense of what it means to another human being.
Is there a line on the album that still hits you hard every time you hear it?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. I mean, honestly, to me, like the thing that always underlines everything is hell is a state of mind, obviously, because I feel like everything leads back to that. It is such a large subject in itself. But it would be hard to pick apart a certain lyric, but I think a title of the track L'appel du vide, I love that because I love it as a concept and I love it as a theme that I've explored so much in my life. I sort of felt so connected to that phrase even before I ever knew that I'd write it into a song. But because it is, to everyone who doesn't understand what it means, it is a French term. When you turn it into English, it's call of the void, which essentially is that feeling of intrusive thoughts. It's that feeling where, you can be in a car driving in the middle of a highway and, you get that thought in your head that, hey, what if I just, steer the car and drive into an oncoming traffic? What if you're on a bridge and you're like, what if I jump? Or what if I, do this and this and this? And it's so somehow tragic and hauntingly beautiful because it's that ultimate manifestation of losing control, which is something that everyone is scared of. It's such a universal feeling that no one wants to ever go through. So I think that's something that still hits me because it's something that, even if you can be in your best, best state of mental health or your best health in general, there's always going to be that little fear that that one dark part of your brain will tell you, hey, what if that happens? And so, yeah, I think that's one that definitely always hits.
Do you see songwriting as therapy, confrontation, or self-exposure?
Well, I think therapy, in its best state is a mixture of all of those things. I feel like you can't do a fully therapeutic session unless you're willing to give yourself to someone else and you're willing to open up fully. So to me, it is always a therapeutic experience going through all of those sort of subcategories. But, it's always going to be a good mixture of all of those, definitely.
It definitely is. There is a lot of intensity in your music. Where does the aggression on this record come from?
I think, it's two things. Number one is definitely the fact that I feel like after the last record, I was so sort of like in speech marks purified in the sense or in a musical sense that I got back to the pure joy of writing music. And I feel like I really went back to my roots of music, which are, it's Iron Maiden, it's Judas Priest, it's Alice Cooper, it's stuff like that. And I feel like, that aggressiveness, not at face value, not as a blast beat thing, but as intensity of the songs, the riffs, the performance of the vocals and the lyrics. It definitely comes back from those records and that inspiration, which I like to explore again for the first time in a long time. But I feel like it also comes from just, because that's who I am. I'm not an aggressive person by any means, but I'm a very intense person. I feel strongly about art, and when I get into art, I get into it. I'm fully inside of that bubble. And, I can imagine myself being on stage and performing. I'm always, I like to give myself into that moment. And I think that's where it really, like, down to the line, that's where it comes from. But a mixture of those two things.
Okay, thank you. Was there a moment in the studio where things felt almost out of control?
I mean, there were two moments. One was where we entered Finnvox Studios, where we spent a month recording just the basic tracks, the drums, bass, and rhythm guitars. And at some point, we had 25 guitar amplifiers with 10 cabinets, which we were testing, mix and match every one of them. I was like, okay, this is feeling very strange, but I'm so happy we're doing it because we're leaving no stone unturned in a sonic point of view. But then there was another point where actually after recording vocals for a month, I went to Australia and New Zealand for a week and a half with a band called Amaranth to fill in for their growl vocalist. And I mean, it was intense in the sense that me and Jonas were just laughing about it because, we spent a month recording vocals and we knew that when I come back, we're going to spend about 3 weeks more. And it just felt like we were just like, this is the craziest session we've ever had. We've been in the studio for what feels like an eternity. We still have so much to do. We're still doing the orchestral things soon. And I'm here going to fucking Australia for a week and a half. So, there were moments of insanity, but no sort of moments of being scared that it's not going to be as good as what it will be.
Okay, do you ever feel pressure from fans who prefer your older sound?
Nah, honestly, I have to say with full confidence that I don't, because, to me, I recognize and I've recognized since the first record that we're always going to do something that's not going to please everyone. And if I ever would have that kind of notion that I want to do something that pleases everyone, I should just quit because that's not possible and it's not healthy and that's not where music is supposed to come from. Because, I write music for myself. I write a song that I like, that I will listen to and that I know I will still listen to in 20 years or 30 years. And, whether or not someone likes it, cool. I mean, I would lie if I said I don't enjoy the fact that, people enjoy what we've written, but that's never going to be the basis of what we do. And, someone who's like, oh, you're not doing this anymore. You're not doing this anymore. It's like, Well, hell, I mean, you're not wearing diapers anymore. You fucking, shit changes. I'm sorry, but that's just how the world goes. And you've had, people have had a very sort of personal approach and insight to our lives because as I've always said, every song that I write is like it's a diary. All the phases in my life transform into music one way or another. And it's sort of we've given the privilege to people to look inside our lives for 15 years, and the fact that someone says that we've changed, it's like, well, yeah, obviously we've changed. Family members have died, friends have, left our sides, relationships have changed. We've seen so many terrible things around the world happening that obviously our mindset will always be, it's an ever changing sort of entity. And I think it would be very naive to think that it wouldn't.
If you could play this album to your younger self, what do you think he would say?
He would say that you are fucking crazy, and that's like the coolest thing ever. Because I mean, if I would have known that one day I could do the vocal performances that I did now, or if I would be so confident as a songwriter as I am now to write songs like these, or create these riffs that in my head are, they're exactly what those songs need, I would have been mind blown. But in a similar way, I feel like this record wouldn't have happened if Fast Loud Death, Terror Hungry, Brain Dead, No Absolution, and If the Sky Came Down hadn't happened. It's like it's a sum of each other, I feel like. And we it's an ever growing sort of learning experience, and we're learning every year something new about ourselves as musicians or the world or music itself. And I mean, definitely a 7-year-old Sammy or whatever would be super excited, but he would have no idea how to get there.
Do you think modern life makes it easier to fall into mental hell?
Yes. Oh, 1,000%. 1,000%. I mean, I do love the fact that it's getting easier nowadays to also open up about them. It's, obviously it's still a taboo. It's never, I feel like it's never going to be in as sort of, it's not, or I would love it to be in everyone's sort of in their system, that it's okay to talk about feelings and it's okay to feel shitty and not be like, oh, you got to be manly or you got to be this and this and this. I feel like it's going to take a while until we get there, if we ever do. But it is increasingly getting better. Of course, there's the lifelines are much better with even, having sort of stuff like Discord or other sort of things where fans can talk to each other, share stories, share experiences. But I think also the fact that it's so easy to be anonymous and talk shit about anything is definitely ruining the world, definitely taking it to a horrible place. And I mean, just the how normal it is, like even for myself, how normal it is that I accept the fact that I'm on social media for like 8 or 9 hours a day. That's not normal. It shouldn't be normal. And I luckily I have stuff to ground myself, like going running outside and hanging out with friends and having a girlfriend and a dog and stuff like that. But I recognize the fact that it's a very easy pit to fall into, and it's a very easy sort of companion, if nothing else, to just to doom scroll all day long and forget about your surroundings and just, be inside that. And also when you're in there, it's very difficult to realize that those people who are, talking shit about you are not real. It's like they're just in their own bubble of bullshit and they're taking out bad feeling, they're taking out the bad feeling that they have about themselves on you. So, the modern ages are difficult. That's all I'm saying.
In my opinion, it's really feeling like a drug sometimes if you doom scroll.
100%, 100%. And, I mean, there's what I love about this record is that, there's songs like Synthetic, which is obviously it's a song about addiction and trying to get rid of that addiction, but also recognizing that you think it's something that's genetic, it's something that's inside of your DNA. And I think that's, a modern person is born with a cell phone in their hands and they feel like that's the only reality they know. And I mean, that is the only reality that they know because, I mean, even though I'm fairly young, I was born in a time where I didn't have a cell phone. I was, I'd be allowed a few hours of TV time a day at some point, but otherwise you'd have to fucking play with friends, go outside, see the world, breathe air. And that's just something that doesn't happen to everyone nowadays.
Did you approach vocals differently this time, technically or emotionally?
Definitely to the point that I we were laughing about it often with Jonas in the studio, where I feel like I like accidentally wrote very difficult and intricate vocal lines for myself, which sort of enabled me to just become a better singer. Because when you're presented with a situation that you write something very difficult, you can't fuck it up. You have to learn how to do it and deliver it. Not only on the record but also live, obviously. And I think it's a very healthy, or I mean, well, healthy and healthy. It's sort of a healthy habit because it forces you to get better at your craft. And, for this record, I do think that it was a conscious decision that I want to show the world that I'm not only, Samy Elbanna, the guitarist who sings, but also, Samy Elbanna, the guitarist and singer. And I feel like, my vocal performance was much better than the last record. I'm growing always as a vocalist and a lyricist and as a guitarist. And I think it's cool to sort of see that in real time on these records.
If you could only choose one song from the new album, which would be your favorite?
Oh my God, that's fucking difficult. That's really difficult. But I'm gonna say it's wow. I was first. I mean, first I'd say because I think it's one of the best tracks ever written in a sense of melody. Is this what you wanted? Easily, but I think one of the most beautiful parts of a song that I've ever been writing with Jonas, obviously we wrote it together, is No Longer Human. The sort of bridge section to that song gives me chills every single time I hear it. And I think it's for that song and that subject matter, it is the most beautiful yet sort of tragic melody and melodic part that we ever could have imagined. But I'm going to give you a third answer and a definitive answer, which is Hell is a State of Mind, because I think it's a crazy track, start to finish, an absolute sort of story and experience in my head.
So my personal favorite, I guess, would be Blood Diamond, I guess, but that's a huge point is because I really liked the movie Blood Diamond.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. No, I mean, but I love that song, and for me, I've talked about this often that was the sort of catalyst for the whole record in the sense that was the song that we wrote first that had any sort of orchestral elements, and we sort of snowballed from there on out. And I mean, lyrically also, I feel like it was one of the first, like, if not the first love song that I ever wrote because, down to what it means is, obviously a blood diamond it's something very wrong. It's something it has a tragic meaning, but it's undeniably beautiful if you just look at the actual thing itself. And, that lends itself to a romantic relationship or, a substance or just something that you shouldn't be attracted to, but you are.
What do you want the audience to feel during this album cycle?
I want them to feel empowered in every sense of the word because lyrically, obviously, the story, that's what I want people to feel. I want them to feel like they are their own gods in what we are, honestly. Like so many people will, they'll look too much at a third party sort of higher power, but they have to realize that you are in so many ways you are your own god, you are your own sort of majestic self, and you have to accept that and you have to appreciate what you are. And musically I want them to feel just like excited. I want them to feel like this is tapping into that feeling of when you've heard Painkiller for the first time, or when you've heard Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner for the first time. It's like that it's something a bit different than everything else that's happening right now.
If you could summarize this album in one honest sentence, what would it be?
Um, it would be that life is difficult but beautiful.
Straight to the point. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you on tour soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dude, all the best. All the best.
Yeah,
man.
all the best. Take care, man.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.